challenging yourself to just do the dang thing. Just get it done. Make it happen. Quit making excuses. Stop putting yourself last. As moms, we do that so well. Stop putting yourself on the back burner. Push yourself to the front. Elevate your goals and dreams to a level of importance that is like the highest security threat to the nation. So make it that important and lean into the goals that you want to achieve.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how easy it is for marriage to take a back seat. But unlike your parents' marriage, your marriage can feel good while raising kids and doesn't have to feel hard. It can look like having each other's backs, even flirting and looking forward to spending time with each other. And I'm here to help you. So join me here each week as we dive into what it takes for your marriage to become something you enjoy again, from how to handle conflict better and bringing that spark back into your relationship. If you're ready for your marriage to feel good again, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I am so thrilled for today's guest because basically the whole premise of what I do is to help you make aligned decisions to help you live the life that you want, right? As a woman, as a wife, as a mom. And Maria does the same thing, but with a little twist. She actually specializes in vision casting, in vision boards. And I'm so thrilled because how do you know where you're going if you don't actually take the time to think about it? And how do you make choices to make sure that you're actually going to create the life that you want, that you deeply desire, without doing that work of what is it that I want, so that you can make sure that the decisions that you're making on a day-to-day basis with your spouse, with your family, with your friends, with your entire network, to make sure that you're actually making progress towards that, so that you don't go through life looking back, feeling regretful on how much time you feel like you might have wasted not going after your goals, not going after the life that you desire. So I'm so thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for being here, Maria.
I am so excited to be here, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited for this conversation. I can't even when I saw your name on my calendar, I'm like, yes, this is going to be fire. And I just know it.
Oh, I love it. Yay.
Okay, so before we begin, I'm going to let you know a little bit more about Maria. So Maria lives life in the uncomfortable because it pushes her to become a better human and challenges her to think differently. She is an eternal optimist and enthusiast and is driven by her passion for goal setting and dreaming big. She has a knack for helping people achieve their goals through her vision board method and process. Maria's unique perspective is one of a working mother who juggles a day-to-day of being a full-time mom with a full-time career, who tries her hardest to show up for herself in every aspect of her life. I love that. What you'll notice about Maria is she makes moves, and when she sets her eye on a goal, she moves full force. And I feel like for those of us who aren't naturally like that, we can really leverage that type of go-getter attitude and really get that inspiration. Oh my gosh, if she can do it, so can I. So Maria, with that said, can you share with us where you live, how old your kids are, and what you do in your own words?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited. So I currently reside in sunny South Florida. And we moved here by way of my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky. I relocated us for a corporate role to Atlanta, Georgia, then for my husband's role to Nashville, Tennessee. And then we left right before the pandemic and moved to sunny South Florida. So my kids have moved around a lot, at least my older 2. My oldest will be 16 next month. My oldest son is 14. And our littlest, our baby, is 7. So we have 2 boys and a girl. And my husband and I have been married for 18 years. And I really started building out my business, MMS consulting firm and executive vision imagery during the pandemic. It really was a result of me just feeling that tug on my heart, feeling the need and the desire to fulfill lifelong dreams of mine. And I found myself in many of reflective states during the pandemic. I think we all did. You question life, you question your existence. Here's this global pandemic going on, and you think, where's my place in all of this? And at the same time, I was having not the greatest enjoyment or fulfillment out of my corporate career. And I really started to internalize what that meant. What was that saying to me? And I took that opportunity to not just reflect, but like you said, take action. And I started building out the framework for MMS consulting firm with the the main goal and purpose being to empower women. I'm a mom, I've been a corporate mom, but at the same time I've struggled so much through the mom guilt, the working mom guilt, the should I stay at home, should I go back? What happens if I do go back? Oh my gosh, someone's with my child. Like all of the things. Just think everything you think as a working mom. And it doesn't get any easier just because my oldest is about to be 16. If anything, I think it just compounds over time. But I learned ways to push through that. And for me, a lot of that was just aligning something that I had done since I was a child, which was set goals and create milestones for myself and push myself and get to the next milestone, like decompress, reset, push forward again. And that's really what helped me through that entire journey into the creation of MMS consulting firm. And then when I started building out executive vision imagery, it was honestly just something that I had done for a really long time. I had spoken to children back in 2004. I was Miss Kentucky. And throughout your year as Miss Kentucky, you're hired by the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and you go and speak to students across the state. I think I was like at 180 schools across the state. And the message was the same every time. Get out a Post-it note, write down 3 things, because it was born out of a story that happened to me when I was in the 3rd grade. And so over time, throughout my corporate career, everything, I just kept doing that, kept keeping that same mantra that I had had since I was little. And eventually it formed executive vision imagery, which is taking very basic and simple tips and techniques to accomplishing your goal, but then putting it in visual representation format so that you can capitalize on those opportunities.
I love that so much, especially because adding in that layer of imagery really changes how real and how possible it feels for you to
Mhm.
actually create that into your reality. With my clients, they're
Right.
like,
Mm.
I know I want it to be better, but I don't know how it could be different. I just don't want this. And it's just the simple act of closing your eyes and imagining, letting go of all that thinking, right?
Mhm.
All that
Yeah.
thinking that holds us back on like,
Back.
"Hey, that's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
possible. Like, who do
Right.
you think you are? There's no
Right.
way. That's so different from what you have today. Like, you're being unrealistic." But
Mhm.
just detaching that and letting them dream a little, which, by the
Yes.
way, like, we're so good at as kids, right?
We
But
are.
along the way, we kind of lose that. It's
Mhm.
really sad. So I love
Yeah.
what you're about and what you do for your
Ah.
clients.
Thank you. It marries so well, no pun intended, but with what you do. It really does because I go back to when I was, preparing to marry my husband. And we do all of the things. We prepare, we get the not.com profile. You start to visualize your perfect day. You start to put all of the pieces together because you want this day to be something that you remember for the rest of your life. You're creating the visual representation that will stay with you forever. And why does it stop there? I've just always been a creative and always been a visual type of person. For me, then it became okay, well, now what is my next step? So now that we got married, we did the honeymoon. Now, what does my life look like? For me, the natural step. And because I'm a creative and think this way, I'm like, wait, you didn't create a vision board for that?
Right.
You didn't cut out images or outline what that's going to look like? I started to really visualize what do I want my next job to be? What do I want? When do I want to have kids? At what age do I want to have kids? And then aligning that with, of course, my husband's desires too, and what he wants. And so we both had to be in alignment in that. And so the dynamic of creating that vision, which is really cool when you do get married, because now you can create your own vision because we need to have our own vision for our life aside from our spouse, aside from our family. We need to have the goals and dreams that are on our heart and that we identify with. But then the really cool thing about being a family unit is you then get to grow together and create a vision together. So I love the life that we have built because it's been one that we've cultivated alongside each other. And sometimes when we stray from that, when we get away from building our life board, that's when confusion and miscommunication and all of the things can go awry. And that happens individually. If I do my board and I've completed it, but then I put it in a drawer or I don't look at it, well, it's gonna be really hard for me to achieve or accomplish those goals, which is why we have to put it somewhere where we're gonna see it every single day, because the visualization piece of that is what's so powerful. Just by simply writing our goals down, we're 42% more likely to achieve them. But if we add a visual representation component and an action plan behind it, and then have an accountability partner, we're 64% more likely to achieve those goals. So it's really powerful, the science behind it, and just the power of that vision imagery.
I think especially after we become moms, we go through this shift in identity. And as moms, it's even more important to do something like this because whether you have dreamed of becoming a mom since you were little or you fell into it, however you got into it, it's always important for you to still
Mhm.
feel like you. And so many of us lose sight of that, right? We go into this like fog. The
Mhm.
fourth trimester, it
Yeah.
seems like it doesn't end, right? And you have to
Agreed.
remember, like, oh, I was someone before I became a mom. I was a partner. I was my own individual. I was a friend. I was a family member. I was an employee or a business owner. Like, we all wear so many different hats. But then
Mhm.
something about becoming a mom is like, oh, this is life or death. Like, we have to be this and we have to do it really well, and nothing else can have our attention until they get older. If you were to hear your child say that, would you be okay with them saying that? Hey, I'm going to hit pause on my life for, let's just say 18. Are you really willing to put your life on pause for 18 plus years, right? Because if you have more than one kid, then it just gets extended, right? And something about that doesn't sit right with me. I don't want to have to pause my life for my kids. I love my kids and I want to create a life with them. And it's still my life and I'm responsible for designing it.
Absolutely. In order to raise children that truly embody their own identity and their own self, we're responsible for giving them the tools, the resources, but helping them make the right decisions, allowing them to make the wrong decisions, allowing them to grow through some of those mistakes and those decisions so that they can learn, and so that when they are 18 or whatever, we can push them out the door and onto college or whatever that may be, welcome them back in 4 years when they can't afford to live anywhere, whatever that looks like for you in that dynamic right now. But I think one of the coolest things that our kids say back to us is that they see the goals and the dreams that we're working on. They're watching it happen every day. And whether that is my husband's corporate role or what I am working to build in my own business, they're seeing that and they're now a part of it. So they're becoming a part of it. Literally, my daughter is becoming a part of it, as in she will become an employee of mine. And so there are things that I can now start to include her in because she's almost 16 and she's really savvy with social media and other aspects of that. And I just like getting her opinion when it comes to that. So giving her that voice and allowing her that autonomy to speak freely and say, this is what I want or this is what I don't want, is such a huge gift that we can give our children. They then want us to flip the script and turn the mirror on ourselves and say, okay, but now you have to do that for yourself. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission to go out and chase those dreams. You keep telling us to do it, but I'm not seeing you do it. And the best way that we set the example is by leading it for them, leading the charge.
Absolutely. I always say how much they are like sponges, and it doesn't
Mhm.
stop when they're like toddlers, right? We often kind of talk about that. Like maybe you'll slip out the F word, and then all of a sudden you hear them like constantly repeating it as a toddler, like, oh crap, right?
And it's the
But
one word they always pick up
I
on.
know,
Like, they
right? They're
can
like,
literally
ooh.
not be listening to anything else. Then you say that, and they're like, "Wait, hold on." It's like they have a
Uh-huh.
homing device. They're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, we heard
definitely.
one. We heard it."
Their gift of selective hearing is really something
Yes.
else.
It truly is. It truly is.
Yeah, but I always talk about how the way you talk about yourself, from your mistakes to how
Mhm.
you look to how you talk about other people, how you move through life. Do you go for your goals? Do you allow yourself to take care of yourself? Do you apologize to people? How do you communicate with
Mhm,
your partner? How do you communicate with your kids? That's all teaching them how the world works. Whether that's
mhm.
healthy or not is not in question. That's more of, hey, this is
Mhm,
what's normal. This is what you should be doing because this is what you're seeing day in, day out.
mhm,
And what you're talking about and what you're doing in your family and what you're fully embodying actually is
mhm,
amazing because you're showing your kids, hey, I get to have goals. You get to watch me. You get to come along. And this shows you that, hey, you get to do this too, regardless of whether you have a family or not. It doesn't
mhm,
have to mean that this is you being selfish. This is you loving yourself. This is you
mhm,
showing that, hey, anything is possible if I head towards that goal and I'm consistently taking action towards it. And it gives them hope and capacity to dream for themselves and not settle for what's practical, what's realistic, what they should be doing, which I feel like a lot of people grow up believing. I know I did. It's like, oh, what's the natural next step to do? Let me go get the
mhm,
job with the benefits, right? So, like, stepping out into doing my own thing was very much like, I don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm not fulfilled by my corporate jobs, but what does this mean? Right? I had to put myself in rooms where it was normal. It was something good. And
mhm,
so this is why I'm really excited to have you on this show because I want more people to realize like, hey, while you're building that belief in yourself, start here.
mhm.
Right? Because if you don't believe it, then
Yeah.
it gets really hard.
It does get hard. Yes, it's hard to continue if you one haven't thought it all the way through. And listen, there's still going to be things that you don't think all the way through, but like if you haven't at least visualized that path and what it looks like, because when it does get tough, those are the things that you like hold on to. And I always use the analogy of running a race just because it's the easiest one that most everyone, can identify with. But you're running that race and it's like I can't visualize 26 miles, but I can visualize 1 mile to the next. I can get from mile marker 1 to 2, and then, okay, I just need to get from 2 to 3, and so on. But having those visualizations is so powerful because in moments that you do want to give up, that's what your brain reverts to. The interesting thing, too, though, is that when we give up, or when we try to tell ourselves, like, maybe I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough or I should just give up, our brain is really smart and it works really powerfully to support the ideas that we feed it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am a huge fan of consistently pouring into ourselves the things that we want to say. And I've done this exercise with myself a lot. What would I tell my daughter? Because you said
Mm-hmm.
it perfect at the very beginning. I'm telling her, I'm pushing her, I would do all of these things, but then why wouldn't I then flip the mirror around on myself and say the same things? I would never tell my daughter, give up. I would never tell her not to accomplish or go after her goals. I would never tell her not to work and strive to be a good human. Those are just things I would never tell her. So we have to flip that script on ourselves and say back to ourselves, okay, Maria, okay, Michelle, I am not giving up. I am worth it. I will always be worth it. It's going to get tough, but guess what? When it gets tough, I'm going to double down and I'm going to work even harder and I'm going to continue to see that end result. I'm going to see that mile marker. I'm going to see that finish line. That's going to be my visualization. And in a marriage, those are things that can also be tough too, because it doesn't always work out where we're going 1 mile to the next, like high five and like, yeah, I just got this. I mean, it's tough. It's difficult.
Yeah, no, definitely. When you're having marriage challenges, it's really hard to know what you can even do because if you don't have that healthy foundation, it can feel really hard. It can feel defeating. It can feel hopeless because growth in a marriage isn't constantly on the up and up, right? Sometimes you'll go up and then sometimes it feels like playing shoots and ladders, right? It's like, oh, I'm
Yes.
going down a couple lines. Having that vision in place is such a game changer. And for those who feel like, I have no idea what the hell y'all are talking about, where do I begin to create this vision for my life? Because I know that I want something better than I have today, but I don't really know what to do about that other than feel bad about myself or complain.
I always make gross assumptions that everyone knows what a vision board is. And then I do meet people that have heard of them, but are like, I don't know like what they are or what they do, but it's definitely a process. It's rooted in science, it's rooted in the practical things that we know work when it comes to accomplishing goals, which is putting pen to paper, writing things down, starting a journal, or reflecting on what it is that you want to accomplish. Because there is so much science that tells us when we do that, we start to make connections in our brain. Our brain is incredibly powerful. It starts to rewire itself to work for us and what we want to accomplish. So I start the process really with a word of the year. I have participants write their core values and their mission statement, especially if you are in a partnership. You want to know that your core values align. If my core values are different from my spouse's, then this might not be the relationship that I need to be in, So I think it's a great way to do some things individually, but then also compare, oh, okay, great. I align. I say this when I'm in corporate workshops. We know what the core values and the mission for that company is. But yet again, do we turn that mirror around on ourselves and say, but what are my core values? Like, why am I here? What is it about me that aligns with this company that I'm spending 80% of my time with? I better know what that company stands for, and those core values better align, or I might need to get the heck out and go find a place that truly aligns with my mission, vision, values, and purpose in this world. And then we do a mission statement. So I have participants write a mission statement and write that out. Really claim, like, what are you about? My mission statement is I live life in the uncomfortable. I learned very early on that if I'm not pushing myself out of my comfort zone, then I don't feel like I'm living life. So I try every day to do something that scares the hell out of me just so that I can feel alive. I am an Enneagram 7, true to my core. I'm an enthusiast. I am not like an adventure seeker, like jumping off cliffs or skydiving, but I do like challenging myself in the goals that I set, pushing myself forward, constantly tweaking, trying to get better, trying to think a different way, learn a new strategy. Like I'm always leaning into the betterment of that. So it fits. Then I do vision imagery and vision boarding because it just taps into that piece of my creative soul that really feeds who I am. But that can be for everyone too. It doesn't have to be this like woo, weird, cringy thing that people do. It is rooted in a process and in science. So as much creativity as there is that's involved, it's really getting to the core of who we are as people. What do we want? What do we want to accomplish in our life? What do we want to build? What do we want to create? What are some of the things that we see ourselves doing? What is something that we've always been passionate about? What is something that we're drawn to? Not that we're good at. I've been told my whole life I'm good at about 10, 15 different things, but those don't necessarily light me up with fire and passion in my soul to continue doing. So really define those two. And then you can start to identify your personal and professional goals. And then really the last couple of steps are challenging yourself to just do the dang thing. Just get it done. Make it happen. Quit making excuses. Stop putting yourself last. As moms, we do that so well. Stop putting yourself on the back burner. Push yourself to the front. Elevate your goals and dreams to a level of importance that is like the highest security threat to the nation. So make it that important and lean into the goals that you want to achieve. And in doing so, build that foundation. Really, the foundation is built on positive habits. So what am I going to do every single day to ensure that I'm getting to that goal?
It does sound extreme when you're like threat to the nation, but honestly, when we are thriving as individuals, when we are truly going after things that fulfills us, that gives us a sense of purpose and joy or accomplishment, we're different. We literally radiate with
Mhm.
sparkles all over.
We do.
We show up in our marriage differently. We're much more receptive to our partner, more compassionate, patient, understanding, flirty, right? And with our kids, we're more playful, we're more present with them. And when we don't have that, like life is just a hamster wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Same shit day in, day out.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like we're not making progress on anything. We're just trying to race to the finish line. But the finish line is not something we want to race to, right? Like the finish line is
Right.
death. So what would you have to say to those who are like, but I don't know what I want? Where's a
Mm,
good place for them to start
mhm,
exploring and playing around with possibility?
mhm. Oftentimes, when people say that they don't know what they want, it's really because we just haven't taken the time to assess. We know that we gravitate towards certain things. We start with answering some of the questions that I mentioned earlier. What are you passionate about? And what do you gravitate towards? What is it that you want to create? Reverse engineer it. What are things that you need? If you're like, well, I want to make a lot of money. Okay, great. Doing what?
There's
Figure
lots of
that
ways.
out. Right. There's lots of ways. Exactly. So then you start to ask yourself the question of, okay, well, how am I going to make that money? What is it that I'm going to need to do? Goal refinement. When we refine our goals, we distill them down to the core of what it is we're really trying to accomplish. Our goals can become really broad at times, like, I want to make a lot of money. Okay, awesome. And I've worked in many a workshop where that has been someone's goal. Or I work with kids a lot. They'll say, I want to be famous. I'll take them down that road. I'm not going to kill a kid's dream. If he wants to be famous, he wants to be famous. But I'm going to make him think about why and think about how he's going to get there and what he's got to do in order to make that happen. And then I also want him to think about what are some of the positives of being famous? What are some of the negatives? What could you do with that fame? What could potentially be thwarted because of that fame? I'm creating thinkers. I really think ultimately when it gets down to this is like creating the vision for your life is truly tapping into the thoughts that fight for your attention every day. What are those internal conversations that you're continuously having with yourself day in and day out where you're thinking, oh man, I got to pay that bill. So how am I going to pay that bill? Or, man, I really want to run that race. What we're doing is we're creating what's called frequency illusion or frequency bias. And we're focusing only on the things that we want to accomplish. We want to try to distill everything down to what are the 4 to 5 core goals or core areas of focus that I am working to achieve right now. And you keep those front and center every single day and you focus on them. And then what you start to do is you create that frequency illusion, that frequency bias. I spent the bulk of my career in the automotive industry, and I use this example a lot when I work with groups. I'll say, have you ever bought a new car and the car you ended up driving off the lot, like you've never really seen it on the road? You're like, oh, I mean, I've kind of heard of this car, I've kind of seen it. You drive it off the lot, and now all of a sudden, every third car happens to be the one that you just purchased. The reason is because you have now created this frequency illusion, this frequency bias, because you're now biased towards what you just chose. So you're seeing it out in the world. If we don't put our goals front and center in front of us every single day, how are we supposed to see our goals out in the world if we don't even know what we're aiming for? If we're waking up every day and just doing the same thing over and over and fulfilling that definition of insanity, hoping for a different result, but we're not doing anything different to change the result. So by creating the visual roadmap, that's where you're creating that frequency bias. These are the things I want to focus on. These are the things that are so important to me that I want to make sure enter my realm or my world every single day. And so that's why putting that in front of you is so powerful and so important. And that's where I would start. If writing down your goals is overwhelming, start with the basic act of deciding what it is that you want, what you like, your dislikes, outlining that. Do a pros and cons. These are the things I like in my life, these are the things I don't like. And then maybe find some visuals to align with some of the pros. I really like working with people. You don't necessarily have to know what that looks like right now. You just know that you enjoy working with people. That could go down a myriad of paths. That could become something that you end up doing in the nonprofit sector. It could turn into volunteer work, teaching or coaching or mentoring. Like there's just so many different avenues that it could take. But if we don't take the time to do the work, we're never even going to know to begin with.
It really starts with that willingness to be courageous for
Mhm.
yourself. Yeah,
We
I
have to
love
get to
that.
know ourselves.
We
I mean,
do.
we live with ourselves. We're the person that we live with the most. Like we're the person we see the most. We're the person that we're with the most. When we're alone in the car, when we are asleep at night, when we finally get the house to ourselves, all the kids are gone at activities, or the hubby's golfing on Saturday morning. Sometimes those are the most glorious moments for me because everyone is asleep in my home and I've got my cup of coffee and I can think and I can reflect. We move in such a fast-paced world that we don't allow ourselves to slow down, to take the time. And I think about that from a relationship standpoint too, because raising a family, building a life is freaking hard. It's hard work. You have to lean in. You got to do a lot. You got to make sacrifices. Sometimes sexy time and date night gets thrown to the wayside, but you have to fight to keep those present in your marriage and your relationship. That's the same thing as focusing on your goals. Your marriage should always be a goal, something that you're continuously working to build and cultivate, because the second that you start to forget about the goal, forget about the marriage, is when the breakdown happens.
Yes, definitely. If you don't know what you're working towards, it's really easy to just react and allow your
Mhm,
triggers to dictate how your marriage turns out. Because it could just
mhm.
be one decision away from it starting to fall apart. But when we
Yeah.
have that vision, we can stay intentional about, okay, how will I choose to respond to this versus how will I naturally respond to this, right? We all have different upbringings with different communication styles, different ideas of what marriage means, different ways of feeling connected. And so when you're able to work together to bring that vision to life, you know that you are both working towards the same vision. You know that the
Mhm,
next fight, you guys are working towards having communication work this specific way, and you can support
mm.
each other through it
Yes.
because communication can be really hard because it's really emotional, especially with bigger issues that you feel like you're on different sides of. And that's why vision is so important in your personal life and in your relationships. And I feel like more people need to do this so they can truly feel like, oh, having the life that I want is within reach
Mm,
and that you can connect with people that
mhm.
have what you want, right? But if you don't know what you're looking for, it's kind of just like living life passively.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. A former leader of ours used to say, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there. And I've always remembered that, because if you don't know where you're going, then you're just going to go down any path. And I think that's what the majority of the world does, is we wake up and we just kind of aimlessly wander through life, hoping that maybe something will come along that will give us enough excitement to motivate us. But I challenge that and say that action breeds motivation. We have to go do. Nothing is going to fall from the sky or slap us in the face, and all of a sudden we're just going to wake up this motivated human being. Like, it's a chore. It's just like
It is.
choosing to love your spouse every day is a chore at times. But you make that choice. I choose every day. I get up and I choose my husband every single day. I also choose to go after my goals. Some days it's easier than others. Some days I get up and I'm like, yeah, I'm
Killing
loving
it.
you, killing it, right? The coffee's made. We're like having great conversation in the morning, or we're watching the news. The kids are getting up. Everything's wonderful. And then other days it's like there's stuff going everywhere, and you didn't sleep well, or you had another negative dream. It's like always the one where it's like, well, you cheated on me in my dream last night. So-
Definitely had that
yeah,
before.
yeah.
How dare you? Now, what I'm hearing from all of this is just commitment. It's a commitment to yourself. Like, how committed are you to making your life the best that it can be?
Yeah. And how committed are you to honoring that commitment?
Exactly.
And that's really in the work that you do too with couples. We have to honor the commitments that we made. And in honoring that, we're honoring ourselves. And in honoring the commitment that we make for the goals that we set, we are proving to ourselves that we are worth it time and time again. And the further away that we remove ourselves from those commitments, the more that we tell ourselves, I don't really feel that I'm worthy or I'm worth it. And yet again, that narrative, when put on someone else, you would never allow that to happen. You would step in immediately and say, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. No, I'm not allowing you to talk to yourself that way. I'm not allowing you to give up. I'm
Mhm.
not allowing you to think that just because something got hard one time, that's enough cause for you to just throw in the towel. We wouldn't do that to our spouse. We wouldn't do that for our kids. We wouldn't do that for our best friend, for our coworker, even. I wouldn't allow a stranger on the street to have that conversation with themselves. But yet we often so easily turn to ourselves and say those same things that we wouldn't
Yeah.
allow for other people.
And it becomes this like toxic line of thinking too, because it could easily slip into justifying why it's not a good
Mm-hmm.
time to do it. Oh, well, the kids need me. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. Fill in the blank. right?
Mhm.
And that's where that vision is like,
Yes.
oh, I
Yeah.
remember this is what I want and I am committed to doing it. So even if it's like a small action that day, it's like, you know what? My capacity today is much lower than the other day, but I'm still going to do this one thing to
Yeah.
push me forward.
Yeah, there are seasons when I feel like I'm crushing it. And I even felt that way in my own motherhood journey. There were
Mhm.
times with my daughter, I was drowning, but I also identified things that I wasn't doing to help myself. I wasn't asking for help. I was trying to do it all and martyring myself and making myself like this victim when no one was coming after me. Everyone was just trying to give me help, but I didn't know how to manage the emotions coming at me and as an enthusiast where everyone's hype woman and I couldn't be that for people because I couldn't even be that for myself. So I went through a lot of changes, a lot of emotional, like spiritual, physical, mental overhaul. And when you start to come out of that and you see the light, you're like, okay, all right, like getting back to work was really good for me. It was something I needed. I needed to get out of the house and interact with coworkers and other women and friends of mine. And then when my son came along, it was easier. And then I was able to identify when I was on maternity leave, I'm like, oh, I've got this down. So I was like trying to build a side business while I'm on maternity leave with him. I'm like nursing him and I'm like, oh, I'm building a business so I can get out of this corporate rat race. And so it's just interesting how we go through those seasons. We have to allow ourselves time and grace to go through those. But that doesn't mean we stop dreaming. We still can start working towards things. And I use this example to just say that this is sometimes what my goals or my tasks end up being when I think about what all of the things I have to get done in a day. So I do this post-it note strategy where I write on a post-it note every day just one thing that needs to get done. One thing. And on that post-it note, it can be whatever. It can be working towards a goal. It could literally be Maria, remove the laundry from the laundry basket and put it into the freaking drawer or hang it up. Just get it done because it's been sitting there for 5 days and you've accomplished four other things from your post it notes, but you haven't accomplished this one. And then that becomes the one thing that I do that day that I get done. Like, if all hell breaks loose, if anything happens, like that's the one thing that I'm going to honor and get done. That alone sometimes can be monumental, and that's okay. It's monumental in my world because clearly I was letting it sit there for a reason because I'm so overwhelmed. I've got all these other things to do. So I allowed myself grace Monday through Thursday, but then come Friday, I made sure that it got done ahead of my weekend. Now it got filled right back up with clothes,
Of
but still,
course.
it's the practice of making sure that we are staying on task and getting something done every day. Creating the vision for our life does not have to be built around yachts and trips all the time and all of the things that I think we assume when we think about creating a vision board. Creating a vision board can be, I need to build my estate plan. That was on my vision board for this year for my husband and I. What are we going to do if we pass away or if my spouse passes away or both of us pass away?
Mhm.
Who's going to take our kids? Like, that is creating the vision for my life because I now know what's going to happen if that scenario, God willing, never happens. But now I know. That was on my vision board because those are things that are important for me in my life to be able to live the life that I want. I need to be able to think peacefully about what would happen in that kind of a situation. I'm not putting yachts on my vision board. Do I want to live the yacht life? Hell yeah, I want to live the yacht life with an Hermes scarf around my head, my hair flapping in the wind. Like, come on. Like, I've thought it, absolutely. But when I think about my day to day and I think about what I'm building on the ground level every single day, it's really rooted in small, basic goals, steps, things that I'm building, positive habits that I'm continuously building the muscle for so that I can grow and enhance this life that I'm living.
So we've just dove in so deep with vision. And I hope by now you realize just how important it is to do this exercise for yourself. And it doesn't have to be like a one and done kind of thing. Like you can do this on an annual basis, on a quarterly
Mhm.
basis, like whatever feels good to you, but do it. Like that's our, if
Yes,
you take away
do it.
anything, like just do it.
Do it. Do that dang thing. Yes, write it
That's
down.
right.
Mhm.
So, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Best way for people to connect with me is I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn just because I work with a lot of my corporate clients on LinkedIn. So I like posting about all of the workshops that I do there. And then on Instagram is more the podcast, the fun stuff. So I have a podcast as well called Creating the Vision. And we talk all things creating the vision for your life and how it looks so different to everyone. And it's not all famous people, it's not all entrepreneurs, it's not all the flashy. These are everyday people who have decided to take action in their life and to own it and make those commitments. So, Instagram, my website is mmsconsultingfirm.com. So, there you can learn a little bit more about me. My workbook is available on Amazon, and there's an ebook version available as well. So, for as little as $1.99, you can download your ebook and you can get started creating your own vision for your life following the steps of my process and leaning into the goals and the dreams that are on your heart and exploring those.
Amazing. Okay, so before I let you go,
Yeah.
I love to ask my guests a question so the listeners can get to know you better. What's your favorite thing to do for self care?
Journal. I have so many thoughts in my head that are constantly floating around. I love it because a couple reasons. I went through a traumatic experience back in 2014, and therapy and journaling saved my life. It was a difficult chapter of my life. It was definitely a season where I didn't feel like any goal was worth achieving or that I was worthy or that I had anything to offer this world. So, journaling for me and getting my thoughts and my feelings out on paper really helped. And it was actually at the suggestion of a therapist. And I'd always been a journaler. I'd always been someone who'd written things down in notebooks and workbooks. Heck, I'd find old workbooks where I'd taken notes, and then the next page would be 4 pages of me journaling. So you just never know what you're going to find in my jumbled mess of journals. But journaling reminded me that at 27, nursing my son, that I wanted to leave corporate before the age of 40 and start my own business. Journaling got me through the toughest time of my life. Journaling gets me through just some of the day-to-day jumbled thoughts that I have and sends them on their way, never to be thought of again, or it organizes them into an action plan for me to decide whether or not I want to take further, action or movement on. So it's incredibly powerful. And like I said, at the suggestion of a therapist of mine who said, if it's too difficult for you to articulate, then write it out.
Actually, we released an episode with someone who created their own journal. So if you want to hear more about journaling, check out episode 80. It's incredible. But anyway, Maria, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing what you do, sharing how moms
Yes.
can really take that first baby step towards creating the life that they want. And I just appreciate you and your energy and all that you have to offer. I'm so glad you do what you do now and you decided to go after this goal. And I can't wait to
Thank
see
you.
what's next for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me, Michelle. It's been an honor, and I'm really excited to share the message with anyone and everyone who wants to hear it.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this episode. I will catch you back here next week. Bye. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. I would so appreciate that. And if you love what I share here, then you're going to love and want to join my free private Facebook community that's also called Marriage and Motherhood. I hope to see and connect with you in there. Otherwise, I'll catch you back here for the next episode. Bye.